3 and we are talking about political institutions. So this is what we'll be learning about. So now first basic meaning or definition you have to understand is what is constitution. So the constitution is known as basic law of land. So in India, if we consider talking about Indian sense, so what do we consider as supreme authority? It's like we are sovereign state. There is no higher authority which is ruling us from outside of what our constituency or what our geographical area is. Example, during the colonial rule, it was Britishers or East India Company initially started it, and the sovereignty is literally rested with the colonial empire or the British empire. Then that the Indian states or Indian provinces did not have the authority to make. So are you able to hear my voice now? So now are you able to hear my voice? How much time it has been happening? So this, yeah. So it's been like past half an hour. You were not able to hear my voice. Okay. I hope I'm audible now. So please drop in the text. So now the fundamental single constitution that envisages the structures of the central and the state governments and fundamental rights, duties. They also safeguards for the protection of backward and tribal areas. Then protective discrimination of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So this protective discrimination, we will be reading about it in the fundamental rights chapter. So now here we'll understand like basic features of Indian constitution which will help you understand the upcoming chapters. Or if you sit down to read per se Lakshmikant or even your textbook, that study material, you have to understand, you have to be well versed with these features of Indian constitution. So then only you will be able to understand how it has been going on. Now, protective discrimination, the next feature of Indian constitution is rigid and flexible constitution. So example, so here I shouldn't be doing the comparative studies, but you might have had the comparative politics in your previous semesters. So if not, we'll have a little thing about it. So now what happens is the UK government, sorry, UK constitution, England constitution is not written. So whereas American Constitution is written constitution. Now coming to rigid and flexible. So American Constitution is very rigid. So it has to go through a gigantic amount of procedures, amendments in order to bring out the normal amendments to the Constitution. Whereas the British Constitution is flexible as there is no proper documentation present. So this means that it is flexible. So but there are also drawbacks to both rigid and flexible. So that is why the India has adopted for both flexible and the rigid constitution. So this could be seen in certain features, like some features are very hard to amend the constitution, that requires the special majority and sitting present and voting. Then it had to be ratified by 50% of the states. So this could be termed as a rigid feature of the Indian constitution, whereas the procedures which are easily amended through simple majority or just present and voting need not be ratified. So that could be termed as a flexible or partly semi-flexible constitution. Now, this could be seen in Article 368. So, Article 368 means amendments to the constitution. You have to remember this Article 368. The moment it comes to your mind or pops up in thing, the three features has to be on your fingertips. So, what are this first feature is certain provisions of the constitution can be amended by simple majority of the parliament. Certain provisions of the constitution can be amended by two-third majority in Indian parliament, like parliament only. Then remaining provisions can be amended by two-third majority of the parliament and approvals of at least 50% of the state assemblies. So these are three features. If anything as such like Article 368 pops up, this three features has to be in your mind, or this has to be on the fingertips. So this is like something just like the constitution. You have to remember constitution forever. Now, next, another important feature that we are very proud of, or as such, or like Indian Constitution, is sovereignty, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic. So, we are sovereign power. Now, what is sovereign power? Was pre-independent India a sovereign power, or is post-independent India a sovereign power? So now what happens is sovereignty means state is a supreme power. It has control over all of its territory, all of its citizens, and all other associations which are inside of the state. So nothing such an association or citizen has to be controlled by an outside authority. Now, example, classic example, as I've stated it in the first like like initial beginning of the lecture is the British India, sorry, the British Empire was sovereign, had this sovereign control over the India. Then before the independence, that is what we wanted independence to have the sovereign authority to be India itself. So that is what we are, a sovereign state. And another important thing is the the democratic polity. So now how do I establish that India is a democracy? So if anybody asks you, how do you establish that India is a democracy, then you have to come up with these issues like, I have right to vote, I am guaranteed by civil rights, by the constitution, I have my fundamental rights. Of course, they are limited to the restrictions, but still I have my fundamental rights. Then my state as in India, I have right to vote, and I there happens periodical elections. So I elect a representative to represent me in making of policies in the parliament. So these are the features which represent India as a democratic nation. Now next comes socialist. Socialist means it Socialistic state means the state, as in you can say welfare state, which will look into fulfilling the basic minimum needs of a citizen. So this is like discriminative favoring. So this happens. This is a special feature of socialistic state. Then, of course, India is a republic. We have a republic head, which is president. So we have a India as a republic. It is not like dynastic. We are free of those dynastic rules, and we are a democratic and free nation. Then the secular feature means, the secular feature, we all know, it is evident that we as a state have equal respect to all the religions. Now, the secular feature, again, if we talk about France, the France secular feature is very different from Indian secular feature. Now, what happens in France secular feature is France has this equal distance, maintains this equal distance from all the religions. But whereas India, we have equal respect to all the citizens. So the state, if it is favoring, it shall not favor to single particular religion. It should favor to all the religions. It should see everybody as an equal on an equal ground. So that is what the secular feature of Indian constitution mean. Now, next one is parliamentary form of government is also one of the basic feature of Indian constitution. Now, what happens in parliamentary form is parliamentary controls the council of ministers. They are responsible. The prime minister and the council of ministers are responsible to the parliament, and they enjoy their position uh, during the pleasure of majority of the members. And prime minister is elected by the members of Lok Sabha, or the leader of the majority party that gets the majority in the house. So, and also they form a government. And this is some of the features of parliamentary structure. And they are collectively responsible also. Then they have both collective responsibilities and individual responsibilities. And federal structure with a unitary bias. So if you are writing about the federal structure or this feature, you should not write that India is a federal structure, but you should also extend it to saying with a unitary bias. So this could be seen in center-state relationships or emergency powers that exist with the president, or the central list, or the state or the center exercising its power over the concurrent list. So these all could be seen in such features. So the federal structure, this has been mentioned in Article 1 of the Indian Constitution, describes India as a union of states. So the last year, 2024, we had this controversy going on basically on social media, that India is a union of state. India, that is Bharat, is a union of state. So where did the Bharat term has come from? Like why are they changing it to Bharat instead? It's India, etc. But the Article 1, if you read, the original text also mentions the Bharat as a word in it. So the federation was not mentioned. You also should understand there are certain um words whose meanings are not defined in Constitution of India. Per se, leave alone meaning, the word as such has been not mentioned. So one such word is federation. This federation as a word is not mentioned in any part of the Constitution. This has been like uh, amended further, or like the constitution was reread by the courts, of course. So they have come up with this India's federal structure with unitary bias. And this federation can be seen in one national government and 29 state governments. So one government at the center and rest are the 29 state governments in the respective states. Then next one is pluralistic and multicultural society with diverse social groups, linguistic communities and religious faiths. So here we can see India is a unity in diversity with its diverse social groups, language groups, various race, creed, caste, and etc. Then President of India has emergency powers. So this is the federal feature with unitary bias. You can see it. Then quasi-federal and cooperative federalism. So Casey Ware, he's a political analyst. He says India is a quasi-federal structure. So he says that it's a quasi-federal, it's not total federal. We can see it has some of the strict unitary features also. Then next another important feature is fundamental rights. Now what happens in fundamental rights is part 3 of the constitution contains these fundamental rights from article 12 to article 35. Then these rights are not absolute. So now what happens? I, as a citizen of India, I can say that I have fundamental rights, I can do anything I wish to. But during emergency times, or during any times that the center thinks it's unviable to me have such powers, so these rights have a reasonable restrictions. So this is not absolute rights, they come with a reasonable restrictions. And right to property, which was initially a fundamental right, was deleted from fundamental rights and it was made it as a legal right through the 44th Amendment Act 1978. So the 42nd and 44th Amendment Acts, if you read, you have to read down. I mean, of course, we'll be reading it in the coming lectures, but also if you have time, you please go through the 42nd and 44th. You'll understand like how enormous changes have been made. They are also termed as a mini constitution because the word secular, all those integrity, all those words have been added to the preamble, and elections were the electoral structure was deferred, and various certain issues or amendments to the constitution as a basic structure was altered. So this 42nd and 44th Amendment Act is very important. Then fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are mentioned in Article 51A and Part 4 of Article part Article 51A of Part 4A. So fundamental duties. These are also very important. What do we call competitive exam questions. Then 42nd Amendment Act 1976 added fundamental duties. Initially, we did not have fundamental duties. It was later adopted as we read in the initial salient features. Then initially there were 10 duties. So this 42nd Amendment Act added 11 duties enshrined in the Constitution, and the citizens are socially and consciously responsible. So fundamental duties have certain principles or features where citizen has to be responsible citizens, and they have to be socially aware or conscious of their rights or their duties that they should be doing as being a citizen of India. Then DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policies, Part 4 of the Constitution from Article 36 to Article 51. So these are also further divided into liberal, Marxist, and Gandhian principles. Now, these are the principles they direct the state and the central governments to follow certain guidelines in the process of formulating public policies. So these are the principles for the states. Now, fundamental duties are for the citizens. Now, India into a welfare state, so like these duties which help them to be making India as a welfare state. Then liberal, socialist, and Gandhian principles, and also these principles are non-justiciable. I cannot go to court of law saying that my DPSPs has been violated and the state did not follow certain features that are mentioned in the DPSPs. But whereas in violation of fundamental rights, I can go to court, so I can go to court saying my fundamental rights have been violated. So now court can take up the case where my fundamental rights are violated. But if I go saying that my DPSPs are violated, this is not enforceable in court of law. Then the another important feature of Indian Constitution is independent judiciary. So now, why do you think that everybody gives importance to the courts, or like they say they have this higher space of this lawyers or the judges or the justices in their mind is because of the independent structure that Indian constitution has adopted. So why independent means we do not want any influence from the legislative and executive to be imparting pressure on judiciary in taking up certain cases or giving their judgments. Now, how do I say that India has an independent judiciary? So this could be same thing like the democracy. This also could be seen in certain through certain features where I can say that India has an independent judiciary. Example, higher qualification for appointment of judges, protection of them through salaries and service conditions, tenure of judges, rigid procedure for impeachment. So the Speaker of the House and the impeachment for the judge are both same. So this will be reading, I'll be saying now from on, like this will be reading in upcoming lectures. So, but also for you to have this excitement about like, oh, what are such features? So I'll be talking about them. So then important another important feature is single citizenship. Now this is contained in part 2 of the Indian Constitution. This is from Article 5 to Article 11. So this the features belonging to citizenship and who can be a citizen of India, citizen amendments, all those things are mentioned in the Article 5 to Article 11. Now, citizen can, as I said earlier, citizens can move from one part to another throughout the country, and citizens can also settle in any part of India. So another important feature of Indian Constitution is universal adult franchise. So this is like most important thing where I can say mine is a democratic nation because I, as a citizen of India, have right to vote. Nobody is discriminated on any basis, on a basis of caste, on basis of sex, on basis of race or gender or anything. I have not been avoided. I have not been deprived to use my right to vote. And of course, you have to be above 18 years. But initially, it was people who are above 22 years, sorry, 21 years, they only them are being allowed to vote. But that has been amended through 61st Constitutional Amendment Act and has been shifted or decreased the voting age to 18 years. This is also again an important MCQ question. Then Article 326 talks about universal adult franchise. Then another most important feature of Indian Constitution is emergency powers, which is mentioned in Part 18 from Article 352 to 359A. So these are also special features of Indian Constitution. So next comes the three. How do I understand that there are emergency powers? So this could be addressed in three special features, like just like amendment concept comes. I've said that these the three things have to be on your fingertips. If an emergency power concept comes. So the three categories of emergency situations that you should remember. First category is war and internal disturbances. Now this could be termed as an emergency. Now if there's a failure of constitutional machinery in any states. Now example, what happens? Now what is this failure of constitutional machinery in any state means? Implementing a president rule. So governor will write a letter to the center saying, president saying that the constitutional machinery, like as per the state is not functioning as per the constitution, the state has been rogue and it has been exerting too much power or misusing its power, then governor will write a letter, then president will look into it and implement this presidential rule. So that is what we call failure of constitutional machinery. Then the third most important emergency that we call it financial emergency. So the financial emergency is also emergency where the state central government will have too much of authority over the states and everything that it controls under its territory. Then it also another important feature of Indian Constitution is special safeguards for SC, ST, OBC, minorities, women through a concept of protective discrimination under the clause in Article 15 and Article 16. So these are mentioned in the fundamental rights. We will be reading in next lecture. Now, Constitution also provides through these safeguards. Now, how do I say that? As mentioned in the Constitution, the rights of minorities, OBCs, SC, STs, women have been protected. Now, it also called for certain commissions to be established to look after such issues. Now, what are these commissions? Establishment of National Scheduled Caste Commission, National Scheduled Tribe Commission, National Commission for Backward Classes, National Minorities Commission, and National Commission for Women. So, through such commissions, the Constitution addresses that the protective discrimination clause has been safeguarded, helped in safeguarding the rights of these certain categories. Now, the next one is the constitutional commissions. Now, what happens? What are these constitutional commissions? These could be both constitutional bodies and non-constitutional bodies. So, the constitution as such, it is mentioned in the constitution for the establishment of such committees. So there is nobody that can stop them from to be prevailing or them from to be exercising their duties, because their powers are mentioned in the Constitution of India. So one few such things are Election Commission of India, Union Public Commission, which is UPSC, then Finance Commission, then Comptroller and Auditor General, which is CAG. So what do they do? What does Election Commission of India does? It conducts elections. It looks into the electoral procedures, and also it looks into the individual candidates affidavits, and also it has right to declare any candidate elections to be cancelled out. Okay, so this election commission of India exercises this power so that the democracy or the political structure would maintained intact. Then UPSC commission also, it will appoint the executives, the diplomats, the DMs, district magistrates, all of them to work into the executing the government orders and making policies. Then Comptroller and Auditor General also will look into the financial discrepancies. It will keep the government and both the private companies intact, or look into the financial the the finances that they have been spent on, are they valid, or are they duping of those finances, or are they duping of those spending. Then it also safeguards the constitutional values through their functioning, because their functioning we can see in their appointment and their removal and their the tenure and their qualifications. Then next comes their drawing of salaries and allowances. So all these things, five features, will exert their constitutional values, so that these commissions or these autonomous bodies are autonomous in real. So for real, they are autonomous bodies, and these are safeguarded through such five features of them. So I am safeguarding them. I am means the constitution is safeguarding them through the certain five features, and they are the non-partisan. As they are appointed independently, they do not they do not abide their loyalty to any party or any government that is in power. They are non-partisan in nature, because they are not something that has been appointed by a party in power. They are appointed by the executive bodies, through the presidents, the president of India, by having a committee, and the removal is also very tough, and the salaries are also drawn not on the limitation of or the favor of the members of the parliament or members of the state assemblies. So they have to be so we can say that they are non-partisan in nature, and they check the excesses ruling of the parties. So they look into if any party in government has been over exercising their power. Then this also could be seen in UPSC, Finance Commission, NHRC, means National Human Rights Commission, then ECI, Election Commission of India. Now, next important feature. So this is the very basic thing that you might think about, but this is like the crux of Indian Constitution, where what happens in this is the judicial review. Judicial review as such, judicial review in India is different, judicial review in USA is different. But the main term for the judicial review has been adopted from USA. Now, what happens in USA also, it is done through Marbury versus Madison 1803 case. Now, what happened, or what the court had declared here, is judiciary power to review laws and executive actions to ensure they conform with the constitution. So it is a duty, it is a power of the judiciary to look into the executive and the legislative actions, whether their actions are in line with the rules and regulations that are been mentioned in constitution or not. Now the Supreme Court of India or any high court have power to review, enact policies, then resolutions, then orders passed by either legislative or the executive. Now, what do I talk about this judicial review? It's like, let's say, suppose there's been classic example. The initially it was said that the parliament has power to amend the constitution. So it has amended any part of the constitution. Now this has been replaced or overthrown in Kesavananda Bharati case 1973 say that the parliament power to amend the constitution is limited. So it is limited in the lines of basic structure. Basic structure of the constitution has to be maintained intact. Then only the amending powers will be kept intact. Otherwise, that amendment which has been made will be called ultra vires. Ultra vires means void by the court. Now, which court? Supreme Court and High Courts have power to review the enact policies. So this court will cancel out that order. So any amendments have been brought back, they have to be cancelled out by the court. So what happens is, uh, it's in the name itself. Judicial review means judiciary reviews. So just like the movie reviews that you have been seeing, a person they reviews if they like that movie or not. Here the judiciary reviews the acts, the enactments, and the policies of the government if they are in line with certain rules and regulations that have been mentioned in the constitution or not. So that is the basic feature, the basic structure of judicial constitution, which is judicial review. This is very important. There will be many questions in judicial review topic. It will be like uh, judiciary, judicial review, then judicial activism. So there are also criticisms to it. They say that judiciary is overarching its power. It is not maintaining its balance. So it is intruding too much into the executive and legislative. These are some of the criticisms they call it for. Then next one is supremacy of the constitution. Yes, then we are a republic country. Then democratic form of government exists. Then there exists federalism, secularism, separation of powers, judicial review, sovereignty, uh, integrity of the country. Then basic freedom are guaranteed. This basic freedom is nothing but fundamental rights are guaranteed, part 3 of the Constitution. So these are considered as an integral part of basic structure of the Constitution. Now, if anybody asks you what is basic structure of the Constitution, so write a basic doctrine, basic structural doctrine of the Constitution. So while writing this answer features of the Indian Constitution, you also have to mention these are the basic features of the Indian Constitution. So now what are these basic features? Supremacy of the Constitution. Constitution is a supreme law of the land. India is a republic nation. Then we have a democratic form of government. Then we have a federal structure. Federal in nature, unitary in bias. We are a secular state. We give equal respect or equal or maintain equality to all the religions. Then we have separation of powers. Now, what is the separation of powers? Judiciary, executive, and legislative, they are all separated, but there is a method. We don't follow watertight compartment structures like that of USA, like that of American Constitution. American Constitution maintains watertight compartments. If this is my duty as a legislature, I have to do that duty only. I cannot intrude with the executive. But here in India, separation of powers, but also we have this checks and balances. Now, how this checks and balances is seen in the feature of judicial review. Now, judiciary will look into the functioning of legislative, functioning of executive. Then next one is sovereignty. I am that I means Indian nation, India as a nation is sovereign. It's there is no external authority controlling any of my citizens or any of the associations inside of the state. So we are the sovereign nation, and also the integrity of the country has to be maintained. We maintain friendly relationships in international space, so we do not rage on the international organizations or the other nations, and also the basic freedom which is basically fundamental rights, DPSPs, and preamble is also basic structure of the constitution. So there has also been a controversy around preamble, that preamble could be amended. So the because uh, it is it is a part of constitution, the identity card of the constitution. But later the judgments, etc., they also said that preamble is also basic structure, so the amendments could be looked into, so that the, what do we call, the structure, basic structure will not be altered. So then it also considered as an integral part. The fundamental rights are also basic. Then amendments to the constitution, then emergency powers, all these are all like the basic features of the Indian constitution. So this is what we have read today. Then I'll summarize quickly. So if this comes as an so I hope after from middle of the lecture you are able to hear me. So now what happens is, um, making of Indian constitution and its features. So now if they ask you write about the salient features of the Indian constitution, then you have to write it as so basic features of the Indian Constitution. You will be asked a question in your end SEM. So then you have to write the salient features, then explain the introduction, what is a constitution, explain what is constitution, the definition, and how long did it take for India to have its constitution. Then making of Indian Constitution, write little about Constituent Assembly. Then you can write, if they ask you sources and influences of Indian Constitution, then you have to write from slide 5 to 6, and little you have to expand it, you have to write it in a descriptive format, not like the point wise, because the presentation is very important in writing an answer. Like, you could be an intelligent person, you can remember anything, everything, but what, at what cost, if you are unable to put it on a pen and paper, like how do you express it? Like, it's just all be expressing yourself, writing an answer. So then next one, if they ask you about preamble, you can write this thing. Then comes the features of Indian Constitution. So lengthy, written and lengthy Constitution. Then flexible and rigid Constitution. Next feature is um, then sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Then next comes parliamentary form of government. Then federal structure with unitary bias. Then comes fundamental rights, then fundamental duties, directive principles of state policy, then independent judiciary, single citizenship, universal adult franchise, emergency powers, then special safeguards for SC, ST, OBC, minorities, and women, then constitutional commissions, then judicial review, which is very important. Then these are all considered as a basic structure of the constitution. You can summarize it saying like that. So this is how you have to attempt an answer. And also, it would be great if you have written it in a flow chart also. So flow chart laga kuda bumma AC, then you can write it, the description down. That's how it fetches your marks. Be it your semester examination, be it groups, or be it UPSC or any other SSC or any examination. This is how you have to approach an answer. You have to be very particular. క్వశ్చన్ లో ఒక్కొక్క పాయింట్, ఒక్కొక్క క్వశ్చన్ లో ఎన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ అడిగారు అని చెప్పి అన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ కి అటెంప్ట్ ఇవ్వాలి. అప్పుడే యుల్ గెట్ ఎగ్జాక్ట్ స్కోర్ దట్ యూ వాంటెడ్ ఫర్. ఓకే, సో ఎనీ డౌట్స్? So if you have any doubts, we just got 1 minute. I can clear it. Otherwise, if you have doubts, we can also clear it for tomorrow's lecture. So I hope everybody is clear with this class today. Making of Indian Constitution, salient features annappudu, these things have to pop up in your mind. So this is around like 20 slides. Also, you can use this as a blueprint and develop an answer. So I hope I'm clear. You can drop it in the text. Text lo comment box lo cheppandi. So I'm ending the class. Yeah, I'm ending the class. See you tomorrow.